You are
I am David Taylor Coffey. I am a local singer-songwriter, and there's not too much else to say about me.
first question.
Mhm.
What are your influences and inspiration for music?
Um, so I think back to like when I first started playing music,
Mm,
and yeah, I grew up listening to the Beatles, a lot of that classic '60s rock, stuff like that, and '90s grunge was very influential to me when I first started playing music. I think Nirvana is the one band when it comes to local music. In my experience, Nirvana is like the one band that everyone can appreciate and get behind.
yeah.
In my experience with local musicians, I mean, there's so much variety, but everyone seems to come back to Nirvana for some reason.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, the albums like Nevermind and In Utero both influenced me a lot with my songwriting early on back in like high school. Another couple albums that really I think inspired me and helped me understand just like how simple songwriting can be were the two Raconteurs albums.
mm,
Um, if you know the Raconteurs, their first two albums, they just came out with another one. But the Raconteurs was one of Jack White's bands with three other guys,
mm.
and I argue that it might be some of his best work is with the Raconteurs. And their two albums, Consolers of the Lonely and Broken Boy Soldiers, both learning those songs, they both did a lot to inspire me and help me figure out the kind of music I wanted to play, and again, just how easy songwriting can be. More recently, there's been a lot of different songwriters and bands that I've taken inspiration from. One in particular has been Frank Turner. I've uh, been honored to be compared to him a few times, but Frank Turner is this singer songwriter from England. He started out playing in punk bands and then gravitated more towards singer songwriter stuff, but still has a lot of punk elements in his songwriting. Um, he's been a huge inspiration musically, and I mean, I could go on for hours probably about musical inspiration, bands that I listen to. But for most of the music people know from me, which is mostly like my solo singer songwriter stuff,
Mm.
a lot of that gets inspired by um, musicians like Frank Turner. I mean, and then there's obviously the classics like Bob Dylan and such.
Mm.
Um, a lot of old folk musicians. Woody Guthrie has always been uh, very amazing to me, very inspiring. You know, Bruce Springsteen. I'm looking at this band from England called Kill It Kid, which is like this folk blues band. Check them out; they're amazing. I have Against Me covering the Replacements. I scroll down here. There's a bunch of fuzzy like doom rock stuff. I have Cayuse. I have AJJ is always like a huge inspiration. AJJ is another folk punk band that I take a lot of inspiration from. I've covered a lot of their songs at shows. The Smith Street Band is another band that I love. They're like a punk band from Australia that also has some funk or some folk, pardon me, influences. I have Fiddler. Um, Old school Jack White, like from the White Stripes, is also very much a favorite of mine. The band I'm in right now, the Human Fund, which is me and my friend Zach Fontanez, who also drums
Mm.
for um, the band, the Not Mikes, plays drums with me in that band, and that band started as a Halloween show where we uh,
I was there.
yeah, you were there where
Yeah.
we covered
Yeah, it was a
some.
good show.
Yeah, and it was. I'm really glad that we can still do music together. That we
Mm.
still are getting out there. Because even though I play solo acoustic a lot of the time, I love how much more I can do with the band, even if it's just a drummer. But yeah, a lot of like old school Jack White stuff, like from the White Stripes, is another favorite of mine.
Second question. So, for you specifically, what is it like performing live? Like, what
For,
feeling do you get? How do you, you know?
I remember when I first started playing live, there was a lot of nervous energy. Like I remember when I first started playing live at open mics, I would usually play like 3 songs, and by the first song, I'd be shaking, I'd be nervously shaking. Second song, I'd be a little better. Then by the third song, I'd be all right. And I don't
Mm,
really get that nervous energy anymore, but I still get that excitement. And for me, I think the biggest feeling I get when I'm on stage is like a feeling of power.
yeah.
Um, Especially when I see the audience really getting into it. Most commonly, it's a feeling of power, of accomplishment, and just kind of a rush in general.
Yeah.
And different performances might give you a different feeling, but most commonly it's that. Um, for more intimate performances, like sometimes when I'm playing, say like just for like a bar doing like cover songs and stuff,
Mm,
there's more of like a feeling of warmth and relaxation, but there's still a little bit of that feeling of power, if people are paying attention. Um, but yeah, I think warmth, power, and excitement are the 3 feelings I can best describe, if that makes sense to you.
so, what advice do you have for people like performing live for the first time?
Performing live,
Mm,
don't give up, keep doing it. I think the best advice I can give to musicians who are just looking to get started performing is hit up local open mics. That's what I first started doing.
mm,
And the environment is usually one of a lot of support. I mean, open mics, they exist for many reasons, but I think one of the big reasons open mics are important and they should, the role they play, I think, in the music scene is giving a lot of these musicians who are just getting started a judgment-free environment to express themselves.
yeah.
Yeah, so there's way less pressure to be a certain way or to be tight. But in addition to that, I mean, keep doing it. Um, I know if I look back at old videos of me performing, even like as recently as like 3 or 4 years ago, I look at some of those performances and I'm like, oh my God, that was so terrible. I
Mm,
screwed this up. I could have done this better. Um, but the best way that I got better was to keep going with it and to not get discouraged. And I know that's probably really cliche and anyone will tell you it, but it's true. They'll tell you it because it's true.
mm,
Dedication and persistence, perseverance, because, your first show is not going to be perfect, you
yeah.
know, but the fact that you got out there, put yourself in front of people, whether it's at an open mic or in someone's basement or at like the local teen center, the local art gallery, or anything, just the fact that you got out there
Mm,
is something to be very much respected because it can be nerve-wracking. I've been there. As a as a young performer. I like to think that I'm still young, but I've been there as someone who didn't really have a ton of experience, and yeah, there's only one way to get better, and I think it's to be dedicated and to keep going forward and to not be afraid of messing up too. That's the other part, is do
mm,
not be afraid to mess up, to maybe not be the best that you can be. Like, your first show is going to be, there's probably going to be some awkward moments. You might look back and be like, oh my God, but you learn from that.
yeah.
And I think a big sign, or a large, what's the right word? How do I want to phrase this? Um, a strong quality of a good performer is you're able to roll with screw ups that you make and to learn from them and to not let that get the best of you. Because going back to what I said before, it's really all about perseverance,
Mm,
and the hardest thing to do is to get up on stage that first time. the second hardest thing to do is to keep going on stage and to keep performing. So to kind of wrap that up concisely, the best advice I can give to up-and-coming musicians is perform in front of people at open mics first. That's a great performance spot. Don't get discouraged with bad performances. Learn from your experiences and don't stop, and make sure that you're not too hard on yourself, because just the fact that you're getting up on stage performing can be very tough. So keep it up.
Yeah, that's gonna help me a lot, because when I start making more music, I want to do a few shows.
Yeah, no, I know you've been writing a lot of raps and such that I've listened to. I want to see you out there, you know? I mean, one thing I will say about the music scene that maybe I couldn't say back when I was in high school is that the blending of genres, especially in local shows, is a lot more prevalent than it has been in the past. Like, I've been to shows where a rapper is playing, and then there's a punk band and a singer-songwriter. And I think there's a lot more of that than there was when I was younger. So, again, like, I know you write a lot of raps, and I think you don't really need to look too far to find rap shows or shows that you will be welcome on, because so much of the music scene is so fluid and so there's so much overlap. You know, I think keep it up, get yourself out there, and I think you'll find some spots that will be very welcoming to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What's the weirdest thing that's ever happened to you at like a show, whether it's like with a fan or like a crowd or just anything? Just like, what's the weirdest thing?
So I don't know if it's really weird, but recently, back in December, I was doing a little mini tour, and I was playing in New London, and I played this song called the Squirrel song, and there was some guy in the audience that was really into it. And he ended up coming on stage with me and just singing, but he was kind of like rapping along with the song. One of the drummers to the other bands came on and played drums, and that's not necessarily something that's that unheard of at my shows. Like, I've given my harmonica to people a couple times. Don't know if that's really sanitary, though. Definitely don't want to do that probably going forward. But I think, I don't know if I call it weird, but it was just really cool and a little unexpected. And I think it's just kind of like, when you look at my music or listen to my music being very, like very folk, anti-folk, folk punk kind of stuff, to get someone whose primary music is rap was like really cool to see, like the genres bridge. But I don't know, weirdest thing that's ever happened to me at a show, there's got to be like a good story. And it's not, see, you say like, where are some weird stories? And I think, oh, I've got to have plenty, but like now I'm drawing a blank. But I have more like kind of happy stories, if anything, kind of like heartwarming stories. Like I remember a story at the Noelke. I was playing there for this vigil event where we were raising awareness for the issues going on at the border with the actions of ICE on immigrants and the camps that a lot of these people were being held at. And it was a really strong event, very powerful. And at the end, I hung out afterwards, and we went outside to the back of the Noelke, and I think it was this show, and a friend of mine showed up who hadn't seen my set. It was actually, I'm going to name drop them. Do you know Steph Burr? Steph Burr Art.
Yeah, oh yeah.
This might have been the first time I actually met her, but Rana, my good friend from Ranatron Justice from Noelke Gallery, she was like telling her about my music after the vigil and said, like, oh, you gotta like play Steph some of your music. So I think that's what led to us going outside in back of the yeah, Rana really wanted Steph to hear this song. So after the whole event was done, we still hung around the gallery. We went out the back door into this empty lot, and I played a couple songs. We got video of it. And it was just a very cool little impromptu performance. Everyone really got into it. And it was just a fun time. Again, not a weird story, just a happy one, a heartwarming one. There's gotta be something weird though. I'm trying to think. I don't know. I guess I live a pretty normal, boring life, you know? My most interesting thing are stupid jokes posted on Instagram, you know?
Can you explain the Squirrel song? Like, where did that come about? Like,
Explain the Squirrel song.
yeah. That's always been curious ever since I heard it for the first time at the gallery at Nolke.
Yeah, no, a lot of people ask about the Squirrel song, so yeah, I can explain it. I've talked to a couple people about it, but the Squirrel song was written at a time when I was in college, when I was honestly not really in a great spot, you know. I was kind of like feeling kind of lonely and kind of exhausted with like social situations. And was kind of making an idiot of myself in trying to deal with it. It started actually my freshman year of college. I saw two squirrels chasing each other outside my window, and I made a joke with my buddy like, yo, dude, I think those two squirrels are gonna do it. So that kind of stuck with me, but it wasn't until like my junior year that I started writing it actually into a song. And I had just turned 21, so I was going out to bars and kind of being a stupid 21-year-old, drinking more at the bars than I probably should, and kind of like making an idiot of myself. And where the squirrels come in was like, again, jumping back to that line. When I started actually writing it, I thought like, oh, I have this line I had from freshman year. Let me try to put that in there. And ultimately what the squirrels kind of symbolize is like, oh, these squirrels are, you know, if they're doing it, they're having a good life. They found someone special, you know, versus me. I'm just out here making an idiot of myself, you know, to both probably my friends and also to anyone that I might be interested in, you know, and it's saying like, wow, the squirrels are living so great. I am an idiot, you know? And that's really what the Squirrel song is about, you know? It's very much a self-critical song, but kind of acknowledging that, like, yeah, you gotta get your shit together, you know? So it's a little deeper than people probably gather.
Yeah, that's nice.
Thank
That
you.
has meaning.
Yeah.
So anything else that you'd like to just tell anybody out there, just at all, anything?
Like as performers or just like about me?
Well, in general, just about you, about, you know, something you just want to pass on, like a message. It can be to the viewers, performers, anything. Just anything you want to get out now before it ends.
Oh, jeez, before it ends. Well, this happened so quickly. Other things I want to say, I guess, about the music scene, about musicians. I guess one thing I gotta say is go out to your friends' shows. I think there's kind of like a running gag with a lot of local musicians that no one comes out to shows. People will have obscure excuses or whatever, they just don't show up. And I understand that people have busy schedules and such, and there's this thing and there's that thing, and sometimes people, they just want to stay in, and that's valid. But I think a music scene very much prospers when people come out to shows even if they aren't booked for them. I've made the joke occasionally with people, what's the best way to come out? What's the best way to guarantee someone's going to come to your show? And it's book them for it. Yeah, and I guess my big thing I want to like express to a lot of people is, you live in Connecticut, nothing is really that far away. And it really does mean a lot to your friends, to your fellow musicians when you come out to support them. And I'm hoping, you know, obviously we're all kind of staying inside right now. I'm hoping when things kind of settle down with coronavirus and such, when things start to get more under control and we can go out more often, I will see more people coming out to shows. Because what I'm really hoping we get from this is an appreciation for public gatherings and such. So I'm really hoping that people come out of this with a newfound appreciation for going out to shows and such. And hopefully that changes things and gives more of an appreciation for the arts. Yeah. A lot of my favorite music isn't always complicated musically. Like a lot of White Stripe stuff, they don't do a lot necessarily with the music. I mean, Meg White is notoriously a very simplistic drummer, and a lot of White Stripes chords and such are pretty simple. You know, it's a lot of like blues riffs and stuff like that, but they're able to do so much with it. And I guess that's another point I want to make about music, is that the most important thing is not being intricate, it's not being flashy, it's not being whatever. It's about having passion, having soul, and really putting your heart into your music. I try to bring that out in my performances. Not all my songs are all that complicated. Some might do some cool stuff. But really the driving force for me in my music, I think in many ways it's the lyrics, but in other ways, you know, it's the energy I try to bring to it. It's the passion. It's the soul. You know, when I go on stage, I try to put my heart into it. And I think that will ultimately bring you further in music than being super intricate or super technically good. Now, that's not to say that musicians starting out should disregard music theory altogether, because I think music theory is actually super important. I think just learning basic scales and just the difference between the keys will help you immensely in your songwriting ability. And I think it helps people to just like have a foundation, you know, and it's the difference between making something sound a certain way or going out of key a little bit because you know what you're doing versus you don't. And I think that's one of the many reasons music theory is important. You know, I had a teacher once that said, in music theory, we learn the rules so that we can learn how to break them. And by that it means, again, it's the difference between getting lucky, something sounding good and having it be luck, versus something sounding good and you know what you're doing. You know, you can understand why it sounds good and you can build off of that. You know, without like at least a little bit of understanding of that, a lot of the times it's just throwing darts randomly at a board. And sometimes that is songwriting. Sometimes it is just randomly like, oh, I came across something. But music theory, just understanding it, at least in its very basic points, can really turn it up to 11. But ultimately, I think the most important thing is you go up there with passion, you go up there with soul. That is going to be ultimately the biggest selling point, at least in my eyes, you know? Because I'd rather see someone who has soul and passion and no understanding of music theory than every understanding of music theory with no soul or passion.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for your time.
Hey, thank you so much. All right.
No problem.
Well, be well, and good luck with the rest of the interviews.
All right. Have a good day.
You too. Take care. Bye.
Two squirrels are doing it. Two squirrels are doing it. Yeah, yeah. Two squirrels are doing it out my window. Yeah, yeah.
Excuse me, my dog just walked in. Hello, dog.